a seat. Have a seat. All right, how are we all doing today? You the one, I hope. Yes. All right, great, because we're in the right, we just want to make sure we're in the right place. All right, well, thank you guys for all coming here today. My name is Mr. Vince Bonaccio. I'm a teacher at Auburn High School. I've been part of the We the People program for many years. I've been on the same side as Mrs. Brown, where we know each other quite well. And now I'm on this side, and we're going to see what you guys can provide us. All right, I'll introduce my colleague.
I'm Christine Boisgard. I'm a retired teacher from a number of schools in Massachusetts, and we taught great people and loved it and brought students to competition. So I hope you enjoy. It's much better tomorrow. You'll enjoy it more tomorrow.
100%.
And I'm Ed O'Connell. I'm the resident non-teacher panel. And I'm the Civic Engagement Manager at Revolutionary Spaces, and we run the Old State House and the Old South Meeting House on Boston's Freedom Trail. Glad to be with you.
Why don't you guys introduce yourselves, and we'll get going.
Good morning, I'm Oscar Zagorski. We are representing East Hampton High School.
Good morning, my name is Layla Mateo, and we are all juniors and seniors.
Good morning, I'm Julia Markey, and these are our lovely teachers, Miss Kelly Brown and Miss Taylor Dadman.
Good to see you. Hello.
All right. Well, now that we know each other, what do you say we get started? All right, so we have chosen today question 1 for you. I'll read the question, I'll let you get your bearings, and we'll get going as soon as I'm done giving the question. All right, so the question reads, how did classical republicanism and natural rights philosophy shape the founders' ideas when creating the American political system? What role did the concept of the social contract play in shaping the founders' views on government legitimacy and authority? And in what ways did these philosophies influence the founders' views of citizen participation in government?
While creating their social contracts, the founders took inspiration from ancient philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, and Cicero. Each championed ideas for mixed government to control human nature and create the ideal circumstances for eudaimonia. The founders interpreted ancient ideas through Enlightenment thinkers who rediscovered and redefined them with a modern lens, including the ideas of natural rights and social contract, most clearly explained by John Locke. The founders saw the ideal conditions for the pursuit of happiness through the tension between the common good and individual rights.
John Adams' thoughts on government argued that self-government required virtuous citizens, but could not rely solely on virtue, necessitating a powerful yet controlled government. The early Confederation sought simple republican governments tied closely to the people, seen in Rhode Island and Pennsylvania. The later ones, like Massachusetts, would seek a more mixed government structure. In Federalist 51, Madison argues that, quote, in framing a government of men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place oblige it to control itself, end quote. While the founders would disagree on the institutional structures needed to pursue happiness, the tension between liberty and the common good lay at the core.
When John Locke wrote his second treatise on government, he was answering the question, if not an absolute monarchy, then what? Social contract was his answer, with the government formed under popular sovereignty, with the aim to better preserve individual life, liberty, and property. This was the idea of center of both the British rejection of the social contract as seen in documents like Thomas Jefferson's Summary of View of Rights of British America and the creation of the United States in its constitutions. The United States Constitution begins with we the people and ends with the ratification via popular sovereignty, placing ultimate authority in the hands of the people.
States created unique constitutions to best find the right tension between common good and individual rights in a social contract. All but the New York State Constitution began with Lockean order, a statement of rights to be protected, followed by the constitution of a government with lawmaking power. Finding the balance between well-placed authority and liberty is both the goal and quandary of the American political system. In Lochner v. New York, the Supreme Court held that New York limiting working hours for bakers violated a fundamental right known as freedom of contract. This holding was later rejected in West Coast Hotel v. Parrish, illustrating battling tensions between state police powers and individual rights. Additional tensions are shown with when and where the social contract is broken, seen in Richardson v. Ramirez and the court's denial of felons' right to vote.
Classical republicanism and natural rights were crucial influences to the founders' views of citizen participation. In the Republic, Plato speaks about a society in which virtue, justice, and education are the center focus of a small homogeneous community not exceeding 5,040 households, small enough to represent citizen voice, large enough to defend itself. Participation necessitated government close to the people, an idea echoed by Montesquieu, Paine, and the Federal Farmer. John Adams echoed Cicero's ideas about the roles of citizens with necessary civic duties, including practicing virtue, voting in elections, and serving on juries.
Ultimately, the founders chose a republican government. The connection between citizen participation and popular sovereignty would be grounded in multiple social contracts in the federalist system. Citizen participation is directly and indirectly spread throughout the United States Constitution in Article 1, Sections 2 through 4, and affirmed through laws like the Voting Rights Act and holdings like Reynolds v. Sims. Today, we see these tensions illustrated in the case Dobbs v. Jackson and local and state issues like homelessness, curriculum, and social media for teens. The 2-century push and pull grounded in popular sovereignty has allowed the American social contract to continue despite disagreement, turmoil, and even violence. Thank you. We are ready for your questions.
Thank you very much. Nice cue for us to kind of get going. All right, if you could place everything on that, perfect. Thank you very much. All right, what do we say we get started? All right. I'll ask the first question, and then my colleagues over here will ask some other ones. All right, so we're going to start with the following. In what ways did the Glorious Revolution and the English Bill of Rights shape the founders' understanding of constitutional government and individual rights?
The Glorious Revolution was after James II stepped down and William and Mary came in, and they agreed to a constitutional monarchy, but also parliamentary supremacy, which made Parliament the highest power. And we can see that also the English Bill of Rights was implemented during this time, and in Britain, it started out with the grievances that they experienced under James II, and then the second part of the English Bill of Rights lists the rights that Britain believed that they needed. And we can see that it really influenced the Declaration of Independence when the colonists wrote that, because they list particular grievances that they had from Britain. And then we can also see in the Bill of Rights in the United States Constitution with the First Amendment to the 10th Amendment that the colonists were listing out all the rights that they felt that they needed.
They take a lot of these grievances that they write about in the Declaration of Independence and sort of apply them to the United States Constitution as well as the state constitutions. For example, grievance number 5 in the Declaration of Independence talks about the king dispersing Parliament and calling them back when he wanted. And this is sort of discussing how the king sort of thought he was above everybody else. He didn't like what Parliament was saying, so he would just send them away. And so the founders said that they needed something in the Constitution that would say the Constitution is the law of the land, and you can't just ignore it. And that's why we have the Supremacy Clause in Article 6, and it says that the Constitution is the highest law of the land, and you can't go against the Constitution.
The British Bill of Rights influenced our Bill of Rights and kind of this idea that we have these rights that are protected when we enter a social contract, which is an idea championed by John Locke.
Thank you.
So what role did British common law and its emphasis on precedents influence the legal system in which you run your founding?
We could see that British common law is the idea that judges make decisions based off precedent and like what they see with the disputing sides. And we can see this move over in the colonies because juries were a big influence on the colonists, and they believed that precedent was the right way to decide like cases.
We also see that in Federalist 78, Hamilton talks a lot about the importance of juries and how the jury system was really designed as a check for the other branches because they were most removed from the political sphere. And the juries would be the ones that would be making sure the other branches were following the Constitution and that everybody was doing what they needed to be doing.
Thank you.
Third follow-up. To what extent did Montesquieu's political theories and the British government structure inform the founders' views of the separation of powers?
We can see in the spirit of the laws, Montesquieu really advocates for this idea of separation of powers, but also checks and balances, and we can see that in our United States Constitution today with Article 1, the legislative branch, Article 2, the executive branch, and Article 3, the judicial branch.
To add on, during the colonial period, there was parliamentary supremacy, which I think played a big role in the founders wanting a more separated and checked government that wasn't as powerful.
We also see there are sort of issues with this separation of powers idea today a little bit. We see, for example, the pardon power that's given to the president in Article 2. There's very much of an idea of the president can use the pardon power to pardon anybody they want for any crime that's been committed under federal law. And that sort of goes against what we've talked about with this separation of powers and the judicial branch and the president sort of reaching over that judicial branch.
Thank you. So far, so good. It's back to me. All right. So we're going to go further back in time. So in what manner did the governance model of Greece or Rome impact the founders' perspectives on organizing the U.S. government?
I think a big thing is in the Republic, Plato talks about this idea of mixed government and how if we do not have mixed government, we will end up in this cycle that starts with aristocracy, which all the ancients believed was the best form of government, but it would always turn into an oligarchy. And in an oligarchy, people are going to be unhappy, and democracy will rise up. In democracy, it's too close to the people, and it will lead to chaos. And because Socrates said people can't discern between their wants and needs, and so they'll crave a tyrant, and it'll turn into a tyranny, and the cycle will just keep going. And so we need a mixed government to avoid that, and we have a mixed government that's established in Article 1 of the Constitution, Section 1, 2, and 3.
And to expand on what my colleague said, Section 2 and 3 of the Constitution Section 1 lays out the bicameral legislature, and Sections 2 and 3 lay out the House and the Senate. And so we have the House and the Senate being very different sort of legislatures. We have the House, which is very close to the people. There's one representative for every 30 to 40,000 people, and one senator for half of the population. There's 2 senators for each state. And we also have this idea of taxation, right? The taxation was a big grievance under Britain. And so when the founders envisioned the House of Representatives, they sort of talked about the idea of having the tax bill start in the House, which is in Article 1, Section 7, Clause 1, and started talking about how they had to start in the House that was closest to the people to make sure the people were consenting to everything that was happening.
As well, we can see that Cicero really talks about civic education and civic virtue and how civic virtue needs to be taught because it's like very important and it will like lead to like moderation and content within the end of your life. And we can see that this follows John Adams' idea and thoughts on government, and he believes that civic virtue needs to be taught because it's like very important, but also as well, not all men are virtuous, so there also needs to be a need for mixed government, which James Madison talks about in Federalist 51.
So you mentioned education. Is that okay? So why did the founders believe that informed citizenry is essential to a functioning democracy?
So the founders really believed that citizen participation was important to the American political system because they had just come from a government where they weren't really allowed to have very much of a voice in their government. They were trying to get their taxes approved by their general assemblies, but Parliament was saying, actually, no, we're virtually representing you. When we approve your taxes, we are keeping you in mind, but you don't actually have a voice when you get elected to Parliament. And so the founders really thought that everybody should have a voice in their government and be able to elect the people that are approving this legislation for them.
Thank you.
Okay. How can the founders' principles of limited government and individual rights be used in current debates about government surveillance and privacy laws?
So government surveillance and privacy laws and this idea of individual rights and limited government really comes into play when we talk about 9/11. Under the Bush presidency, we had the so-called war on terror that he had declared after the attacks. And we had 3 programs that were implemented. We had Muscular, Mystic, and PRISM. And each program really started to hone in on the American citizens and trying to figure out who was behind these attacks. And we had all these programs really...
You can finish your point.
We had each of these systems really working to be able to breach the privacy of American citizens.
Excellent. All right, halfway done. We got you through it. You guys all right? All right. So we're gonna just chat a little bit, give you some little feedback that we maybe can take into consideration for for the afternoon. So I'll start. I'll just focus on the speech itself. I thought your speech was incredibly detailed. I wasn't really expecting to hear Lochner in there, which was a delightful thing. A lot of court cases, again, lots of details. You mentioned the Voting Rights Act, Reynolds v. Sims, Dobbs case, like, it was quite good. In terms of your follow-up, everybody contributed, everyone had a lot of details to their answer. Like, you definitely came well prepared. Thank you. Yeah.
Boy, and I could have listened to you for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And then I'm wondering, were they taking a government class? Are they taking a philosophy class? Are they taking a classics class? The balance of, the span of years, of centuries that you covered, and you all did it incredibly well, while also making it clear to everybody, maybe in the audience, who was not aware of what the Glorious Revolution did or was, connecting the Glorious Revolution and then the subsequent English Bill of Rights, having all of it, explaining how they fit this question.
Just to quickly follow up on both of my colleagues' comments, you did manage to tell a story, not only through the presentation, but your responses. And it was cohesive and it made sense. And as my colleague said, someone coming into this cold would have learned something from listening to this. I loved the breadth of the presentation in terms of the content, and was struck by the number of court cases you cited and appreciated that. What I always love in these presentations is the ability to go back and forth, not just with us, but back and forth in time, and bring it to the present, connect it to the present. And ultimately, as was done, I think, today, connected to the value of civic education, why it's important that you're doing what you're doing. So really nice job.
I wish I had criticisms, because that's part of our job, but right now I'm having trouble.
Thank you, parents, because
Yeah.
we know you walked through the valley. We appreciate all of your support.
Good to see you, thank you. Thanks, good to see you, Ed, good to see you. Nice to see you, thank you.
Nice work, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Shane,
Thank
lovely
you,
to see you.
Someone dropped. Oh, is that you guys? Okay.
Yeah, no, it's us,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
I know for question one. I know, I laughed. I was like, she laughed, I looked at it. Wow.